Hello. Uh, Subscribe and you might find a penny on the street. Okay, what are we talking about today? Story of my fiance. Um, if you haven't watched these videos before, I'm gonna give you a rating off the bat and then go into why I gave it that rating. Um, Not really going to get into any spoilers, really. I might talk about some things that happen within like the first 10 or so chapters, but uh, so what is there to say here? Well, I think it's probably a 7. It's pretty good, I would say, for the most part. Like, I think it's a fun story. I enjoyed it. Um, I do want to make something clear when I give these ratings. I don't, like, 7, for me, I feel like is a lot of things. It's kind of like one of those things where I feel like if it's a pretty solid story and I enjoy most of it, I'm probably going to give it a 7. So I want to make it clear, it's not like that this is some standout thing. Like, the difference between a 7 and an 8 is pretty big in my mind, but I feel like I'd be mean saying it's lower because it is, like, decent for the most part. Yeah, okay. What's the gist of the story? It's not an isekai. The basic idea is this girl is like a trained assassin. She's a noble and everything, but she's a trained assassin that works for like the royal family in this world. And this guy is like the son of a scumbag noble family. So she ends up getting tasked with getting rid of him. But you can kind of see it's a little implied by the story image here. She ends up liking him and then asks him to be, you know, her husband. I don't know. It's a little silly, I have to, say, but it's fun silly, right? Like it's a silly story, but it's a fun premise, which I can forgive a little bit of silliness for fun. I have my problems, but for now, let's just go into like the gist of the story. So she ends up wanting him as a husband, and basically his ultimatum is like die or be her husband. Because he's a part of this crappy family. He begs for his life and everything and says he'll do it and he'll clean up his family because he's like, one of the members that feels bad about all the things his other family members do, and he's had this torturous childhood where people die because of him, because his family basically hates him and, is willing to torture him by getting rid of those close to him. Some of the major ideas, I guess, present in the story would be the main character, like the male lead, has a like a brother, I guess, but there's a significant like age difference here. So the brother kind of like if there's like if we're talking like a the noble title, right? The brother took this title because the main character was, a little too young, but the main character is like the rightful heir. Like it basically in his parents' will, he was the one that should get the title. So the conflict, a lot of the conflict comes from this brother, bullying the main character and trying to get rid of him and things like that. But the main character, can see that his brother has faults and is trying to take the title. That's the idea, right? And then the female lead, who's that assassin, originally the noble, like, the noble families of the empire decided, like, we're gonna get rid of this guy and all of his family members because they're problematic. But she ends up stopping, the kill order on him and then trying to help him instead dethrone his brother, basically, in order to better their land and people. So basically, she's now trying to help him get this title. That's the main idea of the story. Of course, there's conflicts throughout and blah blah blah, right? Like, it's your typical story. I don't think there's a lot of standout stuff in this series. It's pretty run of the mill a lot of the time. If there's something I really didn't like, so the male lead, he like in that original situation, him and the female lead are, you know, opposed to each other in a way because she's trying to kill him, right? Like she wants to axe him off. But then she makes this proposal, of course. And you would think the logical way this proposal would work is they would, you know, they would coexist for a while, but he would have issues with her because she basically tried to kill him. Like within the first couple of chapters, I mean, he gets stabbed in the shoulder, you know, like he's just bang right in the shoulder. And you know, by her. Like she's the one that stabbed him. She, you know, basically threatened him to a ridiculous degree and almost killed him. So you would think he would, like, listen, I'm not saying you can't have like some sort of redemption between these two that eventually leads to, like, you know, love blossoming. But you would think, like, logically speaking, it would be an arduous road to, you know, the main male lead coming back to, like, trust her. But it really doesn't feel that long. Like, he comes around pretty freaking quick. Like, I mean, within chapters, he's already basically, you know, implying that he loves her. And I'm not saying these are wrong, per se, but it's just like, I feel like you would need a little more of a journey, you know, where there's like points of contention and things like that. Also, this female lead is like the true, like, crazy love, you know, where she's just completely devoted to him and everything, and doesn't like when other people talk to him and things like that. I think the idea is basically she's very dense, which again I think is a little typical in terms of tropes. But I think one of the things that took me out of the story later, like early on, was definitely this element of like, I mean, it's just a little too, like, really? That's, you know, he's okay with this, and he's not trying to really fight back on this, like, this idea of, like, I don't really want to be with someone that tried to kill me? Also, again, I don't want to get into spoilers, but if we're talking this super end game, like, super late game with the male lead, he ends up being, like, he just so happens to be a particular thing, right? Like, he just so happens to be a certain thing later on, and it's a little bit ridiculous to assume something like that happened. Now, they did set it up to a certain degree, but it just seems a little too good to be true that he happens to, you know, have that backstory later on, which I think definitely hurts the plot. Alright. I think that's like a gist of just like, yeah, okay, they're what their goals are, making, you know, basically he has to survive by fixing up his, you know, family's nobility, and then she loves him, and just, you know, some slight problems in terms of, like, the logic behind the love, and that's like the main thing. I guess we'll just get the old SAE. So, what is the SAE? Well, it's story, art, enjoyment. If we're talking story, I don't really think it breaks any new ground. I also have slight issues at times where it's like, that doesn't make that much sense, that doesn't make that much sense. So I think a 6 is fair. If we're talking art, I think a 7 would be reasonable. I think it's relatively decent art. The consistency's pretty good. You know, it's solid. I would say it's a good deal above average. Enjoyment, like, I have these little moments where I'm like, that's not that weird. Like, that's a little strange, that's a little off. but I still liked their, relationship and things like that, so I think I'll give it a 7. Which means overall we're looking at about a 6 or a 7. Which, I mean, I think is relatively fair for an objective rating. Like, it's not groundbreaking. The story is pretty generic. I wouldn't say it really stands out. The art isn't, like, incredible or anything. And as far as enjoyment goes, I mean, it's fun, but it's not like, whoa, this is the best thing ever. But I think all of that serves to be, like, it's at least a pretty decent series. It's a 6 or a 7. If I had to lean one way or the other, I mean, I think it might lean toward the 7 because it is quality. Like, there's some quality going on there. Overall, I guess really all you need to know is, like, if you came across this in some way, you had access to this and you just so happened to see it, I think it's a fun little read. But I do not think it's something that you should go out of your way for. I don't think it's something that you should be hunting down to read. I think it's just pretty, decent, pretty good. Nothing special, but fun. Alright, I think that's about it. I'd appreciate if you could like, comment, subscribe, maybe leave another book you want me to read down below. Even if I've read it, I'll read it before, I'll read it again. I don't really care, that's fine. And, yeah, I'll see ya.